Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. You've definitely heard the name, the big bull of India, a true maverick investor. But let's be honest, the story isn't just about picking the right stocks. How did he actually turn a tiny loan into a multi-billion-dollar empire? Well, it came down to a very specific and powerful mindset for building wealth. So today, we're going to deconstruct that very playbook. It all started right here, with this one number, 5,000 rupees. That's it. Back in 1985, while he was still a student, he borrowed this from his brother. He promised to return it with a profit, of course. It's barely anything, right? Just a tiny seed capital. But you know what? It was all he needed to get in the game.
So, the big question is, how on earth does 5,000 rupees balloon into a 30,000 crore portfolio? We're talking billions of dollars here. It wasn't a lottery ticket, and it certainly wasn't some single magic formula. It was a disciplined approach that he honed over decades. So let's unpack the core principles that really powered this incredible journey. To really understand Jhunjhunwala, you have to get this one thing. He wasn't just an investor. He operated with two totally distinct mindsets. You could almost say he had two brains, the trader brain and the investor brain. And this duality, it was the secret sauce to both his early wins and his massive long-term wealth. Okay, so on one hand, you had his trader brain. This was all about the short term, playing the momentum, following trends, using technical charts, and being absolutely ruthless about cutting his losses with stop losses. This is how he built his initial capital. But then his investor brain kicked in, and that was a completely different game. It was all about the long haul, digging super deep into a business's fundamentals and, most importantly, having the conviction to hold on for years, sometimes even decades. He started as a trader to build a war chest, then he deployed it as an investor to build an empire.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. He said it himself. A lot of people only know him as this legendary long-term value investor, but he never forgot his roots. It was trading, and trading alone, that gave him the financial firepower to make those huge long-term bets that would eventually define his entire legacy. All right, so let's switch gears and focus on that investor brain. You'd probably think his process for picking stocks was some incredibly complex, secret formula, right? But nope. At its core, it was a surprisingly simple, yet really powerful checklist. This was his filter to cut through all the market noise and just focus on what truly mattered. So here it is, the Big Bull's checklist. First, he'd ask, is the business scalable? He was looking for companies that could grow their revenue and profits like crazy. Second, is the management team trustworthy? For him, competent and honest leadership was absolutely non-negotiable. Third, does it have pricing power? You know, the ability to raise prices without losing all your customers. Fourth, does it generate a high return on capital? Basically, is the company a master at reinvesting its own profits to make even more money? And finally, the ultimate test. Did he have enough conviction in the story to hold it for years and let that compounding magic really work?
Now, theory is one thing, but let's see this philosophy in action. And there is no better example than what is arguably his most famous investment ever, Titan. Now, this was not an obvious bet. In fact, to almost everyone else at the time, it looked like a downright terrible idea. Just take a look at these numbers from the early 2000s. The company was in real trouble. Profits had completely tanked, falling from over 23 crores to just about 6 crores. Dividends were slashed. They were dealing with factory lockouts, intense competition. The stock was in the doghouse. Honestly, nobody wanted to touch it. So the question is, why would anyone, let alone a brilliant investor, bet big on a company that looked like this on the surface? What was the hidden story? This is where his deep, almost obsessive research and that long-term vision really came into play. And boom, here it is. This is the aha moment. While everyone else was looking at the ugly headline numbers, Jhunjhunwala did something simple. He actually read the annual report. And buried inside, he saw that one specific part of the business, the Tanishka jewelry segment, was growing at an explosive 30% year on year. He completely ignored the temporary problems because he saw the massive long-term trend. India's rising middle class was going to want branded, trustworthy jewelry. This brings us to something that goes way beyond strategy and checklists. It's about psychology. I mean, having a checklist is one thing, but having the guts to actually stick with your conviction when everyone else is running for the exits, that is what separated him from the crowd. He truly lived by this philosophy. I mean, think about the 2008 financial crisis. Absolute chaos, right? His portfolio got hammered
down more than 30%. Most people would have panic sold everything, but not him. He held on to his core investment like Titan, believing that as long as the business itself was solid, the market panic was just noise.
And if you really want to see what extreme conviction looks like, this is it. At one point, Titan wasn't just another stock in his portfolio. It was nearly 40% of his entire net worth. Just let that sink in. This wasn't just an investment. It was an all-in, bet-the-farm kind of move on a business he felt he understood better than anyone else.
And, when you zoom all the way out and connect all the dots, you realize something profound. All of his individual stock picks, they were all just pieces of one single gigantic bet. He had this unwavering, almost religious belief in the India growth story. He believed that its people would consume more, save more, and demand better products. That was the unstoppable tide that he knew would lift all of his carefully chosen boats.
So as we wrap this up, the real lesson from his playbook leaves us with a powerful question for ourselves. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala found his big story in the rise of modern India. The question for any long-term investor is this: what is the one big, unstoppable story that you truly believe in? And are you willing to back it with both your money and your patience?